Hello, this is your boy Jay Hicks, and welcome to another episode of Being a Man. Normally, I have guests on discussing these topics with me, but on this particular subject, it would just be me. So, with this subject, we talked about grief. This episode, I would like to discuss trauma. So, normally, I ask a person or whoever my guests are, when you hear the word trauma, what comes to mind? Well, the dictionary definition of trauma is a deeply distressing experience. So, with that being said, trauma is always associated with a negative aspect of it. But for me personally, we all going to experience trauma. Unfortunately, that's life. But are you realizing how that trauma has affected you? So I want to go to or run through a couple of examples of trauma. All right, so it's a deeply or distressing experience that we all may have experienced, not knowing that it basically molds our lives. For example, I'm an educator. I've been a coach. I always have told my players, know your why. What is the reason or why you do something? But me telling them that a lot of times we don't realize our why comes from our trauma. Prime example. All right, so when I was younger, I don't mind mentioning this, but as a child, I witnessed a form of domestic violence. Now, that will scar a child for the time being or throughout their whole life. But that child will not know how it would shape and mold their life. For me personally, me witnessing that, I am a firm believer against any type of form of domestic violence. But so much so to point, if I see any woman in distress, okay, I would like to reach out to them and help them. But let's not get twisted. Men have been the victims as well. But my experience of trauma has molded me to who I am today, such as I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother. I am motivated to do those things to the best of my ability. And I get enjoyment out of seeing my loved ones, the people who I care about, safe and happy. Uh, Sometimes we may experience trauma that did not directly affect us or have an impact on us directly, and we still tailor it to our lives. An example of that for me specifically. So my family calls me the other man. You ask me if it's gonna be raining, sleet, snow, tornadoes, hurricanes, my family, they know I'm on it. But that comes from, okay, I love watching movies, but I see on the news when I was younger there were tornadoes all over in our area. To the point where that trauma, okay, I have a sense of direction. I know what forms a tornado. I know how fast a tornado can form. I know what it sounds like. I can look at a map or a radar as the weatherman is discussing something. So much so that I literally, one year, my family and I, we were in a tornado warning. Well, multiple counties. I was able, yes, I knew the safety of my home was safer to stay there, but me knowing the timeline and how things are formed, my job is a school, my office was very centered. Guess what? I had time to take my family there. The weather was fine, it was perfect. Once we got there, it started raining. If anything happened, I felt much safer in that building than my actual home at the time. Now, some of you probably think about like, okay, that's unsafe, or I'm acting out of fear. And sometimes that's what trauma does for us. But even when we think about fear, how do you react to fear? Do you let fear handicap you so much to the point where you can't enjoy life, or do you battle it? I have a fear of not being a good father. Well, guess what? I try much harder. Trauma is what you feel is a deep passion or something deep to you. All right, so we talked about grief. Okay, so I can go on and on, but within grief, I discuss situation with my father. Now, granted, Lord knows I love my dad to death, but when I was younger, there was a few times where he would say, "Hey, son, I'm going to bring you this. I'm going to give you this," and because I loved him so much, Like if he didn't come through with that, it would hurt me to my core. So much so sometimes I will cry because I'm thinking to myself like, golly, like I'm his son, he's supposed to love me. Like, why? And because of that, even as an adult, now so much to the point where if someone says that they're going to get something for me, I don't expect anything to be given to me. Like, let's just be real. We all are at an age where God has blessed me to have my own job. I can get my own things that I would like to have. And I enjoy the simple things like, hey, you in my presence, God bless you another day, cool. But still, deep down in the back of my mind, if someone was to say, okay, Jeremiah, and they volunteered to me this, okay, Jeremiah, I'm going to get you this. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But like deep down, I don't be expecting that because I'm not going to put my hopes up or get my hopes up on something that you said. And that goes back from childhood trauma. Now, because of trauma, me personally, that's why I've been able to do the things that I do now. I enjoy learning different things. I understand life happens, anything can change any other day. But I want to talk about this because a lot of times it's not so much about the trauma, it's realizing that we are suffering from it and how can we fix it. Because a lot of times I'm very aware of all of my trauma and I don't look at it as a bad thing. I thank God for my experiences and how I have reacted to them. But everyone does not do the same. And also, before I mention this example, I want you all to know it's always easier to point a finger at someone else or to pick out their flaws than it is to do the same of yourself. And once you can admit to yourself of some certain things and work on it, then that's when you're making progression. That's when you are a woman. That's when you are a man. But I had a friend, close friend, thought of him as a brother. Uh, had a situation. I know his whole life story and every single thing. And looking back on, we're not friends now. But the reason why we're not friends is because some things with his trauma that he never dealt with that he put off on other people, and me specifically. Whereas in the past, okay, we could talk about any and every single little thing, but one little thing happened, and because based off of his trauma and his responses to it and not admitting to it or realizing the situation wasn't the same as then, I mean, unfortunately, things happen. Still have love for that person. Hope that person is doing well. But that's just one of the things that I can notice. Or even specifically as far as those of us who have been in a committed relationship that didn't work out. A lot of times, whereas, okay, you're in a relationship with a person, you have done your all, done everything that you could do. Think and know for a fact that you were the best spouse companionship ever. And that person has done you wrong and done you dirty. So guess what? Break up from that person. Next person, because of that trauma, they gotta suffer. They suffer in some type of way, and you don't even know it. If you've been done wrong time and time again by a certain person, the next person that comes and try to change your life, you're gonna blame that person or lash out at them based off of trauma that you experienced with somebody else. That's not right. It's not fair. Or you may have gave your all to that previous person to the point now this new relationship or situationship, whatever you want to call it, you don't feel comfortable or the smallest little thing. If you, a lot of people are 50-50. All right, let's just be honest. I'm a Libra, so let's just say I love balance, but it's a type of balance. So, but let's say people like it 50-50. If you do 51-49 after that bad relationship to the point of this new relationship, like that's gonna put a strain on your relationship. It's gonna be stress on you and stress on that person because if you're not open about your own trauma and your own misdoings or what you're working with, guess what? You have to give that person the opportunity of seeing if they would like to stay or help you get through it. So I just feel as though after the grief topic that I discussed with my friends earlier, that trauma is something else that in many communities and many people, we feel as though, okay, this is something I shouldn't talk about. I should keep it to myself, and just live life. It's okay to admit. I'm not saying go out and just tell everybody, oh, every little thing. Don't use it as an excuse. But guess what? A lot of things you could realize, like, oh, okay, like me personally, like, shoot, I didn't realize really, like, me telling people, like, okay, you volunteer to attend because it's like, okay, this is something you decide to do. Like, I didn't come to you like, hey, would you get me this? Like, no, you volunteered and told me that you would get me something. And I'm making that person suffer by telling them, like, hey, don't have to worry about only because in the back of my mind or in actuality, that's dealing with trauma from childhood. That's lack of trust, that's lack of belief in another person. And things should not be that way. But yet, hey, I'm a firm believer in God and higher power, so I just pray about it. But those of you, like, just sit down sometimes. Like, just think about some little habits that you have. Like, okay, like even your why. A lot of times, like, we go through a day like robots, like we're programmed. We just keep going, keep going, keep going. But we don't know that there's certain traits or certain habits that we do that's based off of trauma. And when you can sit down, write out those things, if it's bad, like I said, there's a positive and there's always a negative. That's why I said, like, okay, from my past trauma, like, that motivate me to go harder. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Okay, this is not to brag. I was happy to get a bachelor's degree. Thank God. Never saw myself even getting it. Before I knew it, blink of an eye. Guess what? Got two masters, then started a PhD program. And I did all of that just in the back of my mind because I feel as though there's something I'm missing. Like, I have to be good. But good enough for who? Like, be happy with who you are. Like, there's always, I've always been told, there's always someone doing worse than you. So be mindful of that blessing. Also, if you wake up in the morning and you take a breath and that you're still here, that's motivation. That is a why. That means you have something that is not complete that you must have to continue to do. So, with that being said, I'm Jeremiah Hicks. People call me Jay Hicks. This is the episode of Being a Man. I love you. I want to see you all do the very best. Stay motivated. Times get hard. Hey, but if you're breathing, you're living, stay motivated. Keep going. All right. Love you. Later.